So I think we're going to get started. Thank you both for coming. Welcome to the meeting with Gazette Mail editors. We're talking to Democratic candidates for Kanawha County Sheriff today. And what we'll do before we get started is we will introduce ourselves, and then I'll talk more to you. So I'll start down here on the end of the table.
I'm Whitney Burdett. I'm an editorial writer for the Daily Mail opinion page.
I'm Kelly Merritt, editor of the Daily Mail opinion page.
I'm Dan Dorisher. I'm the Kanawha County reporter.
I'm Dawn Miller. I'm the Gazette opinion page editor.
And I'm Greg Moore. I'm the city editor for the Gazette Mail.
Okay, so what we like to do is we like each of you to introduce yourselves and then take just maybe a minute and tell us why you're running, and then we'll get into questions and discussion. And we've just been joined by a photographer. Okay, very good. So, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Dave Tucker, running for sheriff to give the people a choice. Let the people decide who will become their next sheriff. I have the qualifications. My past experience, 40 years in law enforcement, 30 years in the military. I feel like I'm adequate. I was your sheriff for 2 terms and brought a lot of new stuff to the sheriff's department, which is now being used.
Thank you. So,
my name is Mike Rutherford. I've been with the Sheriff's Office 39 years. Been a law enforcement in Kanawha County for 44 years. I'm currently the Chief Deputy and a former 2-term sheriff. I love the job. I love the people. I think we've created a whole new working environment for our employees that I think they deeply appreciate. We've worked on many public safety issues for the schools, for the public, for the officers themselves. And we did a lot of work in the tax office, created some new procedures in the tax office that has helped out a lot. And I think I'd like to continue on with the process because I think we've made great strides in the Sheriff's Office over the last 12 years.
okay, thank you. And I neglected to say, I should have spelled out at the beginning, we are live streaming this, so your comments are being broadcast to our readers and viewers. You want to start, Kelly? You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay, so you've both been sheriff before, both 2 terms, so you both have a pretty good record of experience to draw on. So I'll just ask you both, when you look back at your experience, can you point to specific accomplishments, things you're particularly proud of, 1 or 2 examples?
Yeah.
You want to start?
I had a vision when I was elected sheriff, to bring safety to Kanawha County. With that said, I developed a bomb squad certified by the FBI, the first certification in the state of West Virginia. That bomb squad was used throughout the state until the state police became involved in the bomb attacks. I developed a program which I was very proud of, and that was the DARE program. The DARE program, we got into the schools. With that, I put the community policing in effect. That's where the deputies got out of the cruisers. They were talking with our citizens and became a working operation. I felt like that law enforcement can't do it all by themselves. It takes the community involvement. And with their eyes and ears, along with law enforcement, we can accomplish so much. I created a domestic violence coordinator. That was needed bad. With that, I had the vision of I seen what was going to happen in the future. The bomb squad, the SRT, SWAT team, which was trained by the Army, the problems that we had 9/11, I foreseen this would happen before. So we had to get prepared for the future, which is what we did. When I first went in the sheriff's department, they had a lot of the equipment was antiquated. They had cruisers that were over 150,000 miles. I started a rotation basis where when a cruiser got so many miles, it was shelved and we got new. It was replaced. That was in a rotation basis. With that said, I think that the The programs that I left instilled is probably maybe using today. I've heard from different parts of the county which I've been out, said that this is not so. If elected, when elected, the DARE program will definitely go back into the schools, because that's where I think the future of not only that, but the drug situation. While I was there, we had a program called graduation. The bomb techs would go out before every graduation. We would police the area to make sure it was secure. That was secured until the people started coming in, then we opened it up. But the bomb techs were on hand at every one. Project Graduation was very effective. It works.
Okay, that's good, thank you. So we'll come back to some of these subjects in a while. I'd like to hear from you, some of your charter accomplishments.
Sure. When I first came into office, there was a lot of lawsuits and arguments going between the sheriff's office, our judges, other elected officials, and other individuals around the county. I stopped that. We now get along very well with each other. When we have disagreements, we're able to sit down and talk it over and get them taken care of. We don't sue each other anymore. We don't fight, fuss in public. We sit down like gentlemen and do our jobs. Also, there was a K-9 division when I came into office that was under-equipped and way under-trained. I pulled them all off the road because of liability purposes. And then we completely redid the K-9 unit, and they are now a highly trained unit. That's gone actually through military training out of the K2 business in North Carolina. We started the Day Report Center about the first 6 months of my term. We also started the drug court with Judge Bailey. Those have been extremely successful in turning people around, getting them off of drugs. If they have problems with such things as domestic violence, they go to batters intervention classes and different things that are tuned specifically for them, whatever the problems may be. And it's saved the county literally millions of dollars over the last several years in jail fees. So we're very proud of that. We instituted a situation called Graduation Prom Alive. This is when we have graduation in proms for our high school kids. We were having kids that were killed in car crashes and seriously injured for many, many years. And as a result of this program, for the last 11 years, we've had nobody that's been injured or killed in traffic crashes or other incidents during prime or proms or graduations. As a continuation of that, we started putting, we already had 3 resource officers in the schools, but we worked with the county commission, and now we're having deputies rotating around different schools in the county on various times and various dates to secure the schools. We've worked very closely with the schools. In addition to that, we've worked very closely with getting our cars out and deputies out working with the school buses, people passing the school buses here, and that's been very effective. We also, have did a lot of work in drug suppression. As a matter of fact, you probably remember in the last, probably about the last month, we've recovered probably close to $750,000 in drugs, mostly heroin, meth, some marijuana, many guns, a lot of cash from people that are involved in the drug trade around the county. And part of that, a lot of it has to do with what we call our STOP team, the Sheriff's Tactical Operation Patrol. And they do the street level type crimes where they go into the neighborhoods. We get tips on the tip line that I started in 2005. They go into the neighborhoods and watch areas where we get the tips. And they've been very successful at clearing out drug dealers in neighborhoods and so forth. So we did a tremendous amount of work over the last 12 years, particularly in the drug apprehension and the drug suppression and protecting our kids in the schools. So we've worked very hard with doing that.
Thank you.
question? You want to ask it or you want to follow up?
Tell us about, go ahead and follow up.
Well, there was this, you mentioned the DARE program, Mr. Tucker, and are you aware that the DARE program was found to not be particularly effective? However well intended, it just didn't have much effect on preventing young people from starting drugs or even alcohol?
Well, I think that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I think the DARE program, you have to start somewhere with our youth. And I think the DARE program was very effective. It was in my 8 years. The DARE program starts when the youth are most vulnerable for drugs. Now, I'm not talking about the hard drugs. I'm talking about the pills, the prescriptions, those type things. That's what leads to your hard drugs. In the program, I not only had the DARE program, but I also had the program called Deputy Field. That's none other than, are you familiar with the show and tell with our youth? I'm talking about the little fellows in 3rd, 4th grades. Okay, that show and tell, we brought the individuals in and we had a marionette. And that was nothing but to familiarize our youth with our law enforcement officers. I not only had the deputies in there, but I had Charleston, Bull Charleston, and South Charleston. These guys were faithful enough to come in and greet the children because a lot of the kids that I found are not being accustomed or even seeing a police officer unless they come from a domestic, they take father away or mother is drunk. This is the only contact, the first contact that they have with law enforcement. That sets a wrong precedent. So they meet the law enforcement. They have a marionette program. It's something that they can actually see and talk with. That's very effective. Yes, the DARE program, it can work if it's worked right. We had it working very good, but that's where it has to start.
Well, can I just follow
Sure.
on that? Because you kind of pivoted away from the question. And so I'm kind of curious about, you mentioned that you talked about pills a little bit. I mean, you talked about how that can lead to harder drugs, but isn't that a problem with prescriptions and being kids getting prescriptions when they get an injury in sports or something like that, and not necessarily something that can actually be overturned by the DARE program or any kind of program like that? And even speaking to the DARE program, it was scientific, like there were multiple scientific studies that said it didn't really do much to change anything. And so what kind of, would you be introducing a new kind of reformed DARE program? Do you have the resources to introduce a new reformed DARE program? I'm curious about what your tactic would be to try.
Okay, your main interest is to make our youth aware. You're not going to stop somebody from actually doing it. But once you make them aware of it, and it goes right along with the old term alcoholism, all these things go together into one bunch. You're giving them an opportunity to say no. Does that help you?
So on the subject of drugs, we talked a little bit about prevention, but for those who are already, battling addiction, already addicted to the hard drugs, how can the Sheriff's Department best tackle that problem and the related problems such as robbery and prostitution and things like that?
Oh, it's great. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because these situations bring on crime. Whether we like it or not, these are going to bring on crime. They do something to support their habit or whatever. Thank God back in that time, worked very close with Judge Bailey in getting the program now. I believe in two things. That's education and rehabilitation. Those two things have to go together. I could load the jail full of people using drugs. That's not the point. In our society, that does not work. I can load the jails up full of people. We've got to get to the bottom of it, and that is nothing more than rehabilitation. Getting people back into society. I believe in what the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I strongly believe in that. Now I see them nationally, they're starting to put money out for these type of rehabilitation centers. Glory be, that's what we need.
Well, I'm not sure what he means by working with Judge Bailey, because the drug court and day report center didn't start until I became sheriff. And Judge Bailey and Judge Bloom both came to me and asked me to take over to start this program, actually. And I worked with them and got it started within the first 6 months of my first term. So I'm not really sure where he's going with Judge Bailey on that, but we have worked very diligently in trying to give alternative sentences and alternative points of view to people that can come in and rehabilitate people, get them off the drugs if all possible. And I think he's entirely correct. You can't arrest your way out of this problem. So it's a multidisciplinary type thing where you need to enforce the laws like we're dedicated to do, but also to do what we can to help people get off these drugs and get them away. And the drug court system has been an extremely good program for doing this, because that program is at least a year that a person has to be on that program. You cannot take a person and put them into a situation or some type of a program that's going to be gone for 30 days or a week or even 60 or 90 days. It's a long-term process, and that's why myself, along with Judge Bailey and Judge Bloom, started these programs in 2005. So it's been very effective, and I think it's the multidisciplinary approach that you have to do on this, because one, we have to get the drugs off the street, because not only do the drugs cause the addiction problems and so forth with our citizens, but it's a major situation with our thefts. People breaking into utility buildings, homes, garages, whatever they can get into to get anything they can to go and pawn off and get some money to go out and get their, what they need. Right now, the biggest problem we have is heroin in this area. Right on its heels are meth, crystal meth, and then, of course, the pill problem that we have with hydrocodone and all the various pain pills that are dispensed out here. So it's not just go in and arrest your way out of it. That's just part of what we have to do to take care of the problem.
I'd like to ask both of you to just follow up a little bit. Is there a DARE program or a program that reaches out to the lower level, not just high schools, but the below that elementary school kids today?
Right.
I'm sure.
We felt, and we've read the same things that you had read about the DARE program. And in its day, it was the best thing available at the time. But things have changed over the years. That's been 15, 16 years ago. It has been found not to be as good a program as they felt it to be at the time. What we do is when I came into office, we had five units, 5 deputies that were assigned to community policing, but they were working out of Charleston. And I felt that was not the way to do it. We put them out in the field where they can, one, assist with patrol calls if needed on an emergency basis, but they go into the schools along with their school resource officers. They go into the schools, they go into neighborhoods, they go to neighborhood watches, they go to whatever meetings that we're invited to or the ones that we find out about and ask if they would like to have our help. And we go in, we coach the kids in the schools. We go in and do a lot of work in schools, particularly grade schools and middle schools, with our deputies that go in and talk to the kids about the hazards of drugs. And we do a lot of that work. So it's something that we've really worked hard on, getting the deputies out in the field and to the people instead of hanging around the courthouse most of the time.
Sheriff Tucker, you talked about mentioned that, and you put it in your response as well, the drug program in day court that Mr. Rutherford says actually started with him. Can you explain that? Did it start with you, or did you? How did that work?
I knew that Judge Bailey was working to get this day court, and she was working very hard to get it long before it was actually taken on. So she started way back there before 05 when it was administered. That's what I had.
And when were you, Sheriff? What years?
97.
97, 2005.
To 05.
While I'm asking, start with you, Mr. Tucker, is tell me about the cooperation between the Sheriff's Department and other law enforcement agencies within the county. Of course, City of Charleston, South Charleston. And then should there be any attempts at some more cooperation or even a merger?
And then what do you mean by merger?
I mean, do we need however many different police forces, agencies within the county?
A lot of our cities are fortunate enough to have their own police department. When you talked about working together with different authority, yes, my biggest, it wasn't a problem, but the disagreement was with the people in the county. They were, you got to remember, I was the first law enforcement officer elected as sheriff. Prior to my being elected, they were all politicians. I think that's what made a difference between you're going to get along or you're not. They didn't know how to deal with a man who wears the shield and have lived it, than somebody just going in to police certain politicians. I think that was the difference. But after they got to know me, it was good.
Talk about relationships with other community forces.
I think it's
of jurisdiction.
critical that all law enforcement agencies work together. That's why when I first started as sheriff, I called the mayors and asked them that they would get together with me and start what's called, and what is still in effect, the Kanawha Bureau of Investigation. And what we did, we combined our sheriff's office detectives with St. Albans, Nitro, and Dunbar detectives. Because I always thought it was kind of silly that the sheriff's department was working a burglary ring or whatever in, say, Institute or Rand or wherever. And then half a mile away, the city of St. Albans or Dunbar, Nitro, Charleston are working cases, and they don't cooperate. They do cooperate when they're together, but they're not together. So what happens is they're working their cases, we're working their cases, and these people have information over here that is vital, that if they add the information to another police agency, they can solve these crimes. So we started the Kanawha Bureau of Investigation, where all our detectives work together, and it's worked out tremendously. We're solving crimes all over the place. We work very closely with all the police agencies. I got with the mayors on the east end of the county. We started what's called the East City Patrol. These deputies are assigned to those cities: East Bank, Pratt, Hanley, Chesapeake, Marmet, Bell, all the police departments on the west end of the east end of the county. And they work very closely. When they're not available, our units handle calls in their cities. The county commission was kind enough to give us money to hire the additional deputies to do that. We work the midnight shifts for them. So we work very, very closely with the mayors. And I think that's why I've got the endorsement of every mayor in the east end of the county towards my election here, because we work very closely together. We work very closely with all the police agencies. And I think that's been a huge, huge thing for us in law enforcement in this county. And it's worked very, very well. So we work very closely and very well with all police agencies. From what Mr. Tucker was talking about, his cooperation with other elected officials, I stopped all the bickering. I stopped all the lawsuits. I stopped everything that was going on when I came into office. I felt it was easier to sit down and talk to everybody instead of squabbling and filing lawsuits against each other. So I did that immediately upon coming in, because you can't sit down and you can't work things out without fussing all the time. I was a law enforcement officer long before I became sheriff also, and it's true he was the first law enforcement officer, but I didn't have the problems. You sit down and you talk like people to each other, and I didn't have to go out and have a deputy assigned to the parking lot to say my parking space is out there. I didn't have to go out and have a problem with when deputies came over from the judicial building when they were feuding. They had to stop at the front desk, sign in, and then if they were allowed into headquarters, they had to be escorted through headquarters. I thought that was foolishness, and I stopped all that. So I think that's why we work so well together with everybody, because we're able to sit down and talk, whether it be another elected official, the county commission, judges, or other law enforcement agencies.
You are currently deputy.
I'm sorry.
What's your current title?
I'm chief deputy.
Chief deputy.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Tucker, your current role? Your current
My current
job?
role,
Mhm.
retired.
All right. Okay.
Well, if we could get back to the subject of drugs we were on, I was wondering, how is the, using the naloxone, what's the, if I'm saying that correctly,
Yes.
what's the update on that?
Well, when we first started, we were the first sheriff's office in the state to use naloxone. I felt it was very, very important because for many, many years, if the paramedics would get a call on an overdose or a person down, whatever the case may be, they would simply go to the call and take care of the situation. Well, now it's got to the point with some of these drugs, particularly heroin, when the people come out of the state that they're in at that time, they come up fighting. And it's been very, very hazardous to the paramedics. So in addition to all the calls we have to handle normally, we go on every call now of a person down or somebody that's overdosed because the paramedics need assistance. A lot of times we are close to where the incident happens and the deputies can get to the scene. And before we started implementing this program, about the only thing we can really do is calm everybody down away from the medics. So I started here about, probably about 8 or 9 months ago now. We started doing naloxone where we have them in the supervisors' cars, and we're in the process of training and doing it to every deputy on the road to be able to help people and have them come out of it as quickly as possible. Because, if you have to wait for a while, it could be obviously fatal to the person. So we've implemented that program to try to save lives, and it's been very effective. Fortunately, we've only had 3 incidences where we've been able to, to use it and bring the people back. But that's 3 people that are alive today compared to what may have, transpired, unfortunately, if we had not had the program. So we were the first sheriff's office in the state to do that. And I think we're either the 2nd or 3rd police agency in the state that incorporated it. Shortly after we did it, Charleston was in the process of doing it, but they implemented it shortly after we did it through the sheriff's office.
Mr. Tucker, do you have any thoughts on using that drug to help avoid people who are in the process of overdosing on drugs?
No, I think what they've implemented is great. I think it's something that is needed, long overdue. That, along with the actual, as I said, getting back to the basics. That's what we've got to do. We've got to take a not a defensive measure, but a positive way to where we can let our people know what is in store for them if they go down that road. A lot of them don't know it. I've talked to several people that were on the hard stuff, and they said, I got it from I had a backache. I started with the prescription drugs, and it was like I couldn't get off of it. And I said, well, my profession as a law enforcement is to get questions, try to find out what happened. And they said, well, I was always looking for another high. In other words, there's something, it's just like the heroin, opium type. You get to a certain level, you take it so much, then you want to go higher. There's another level. And that's what they were doing. That's primarily what it is. And I'm glad that my opposition said that as far as the cooperation, well, while I was in office, I tried to get that cooperation, but they didn't want to turn loose of the investigative part with the getting all together in part as far as investigation. Yes, I tried to get that, but it was hard to do. I'm glad we've got it now. Be thankful that we do have that, because that is another tool.
There have been some budget cuts certainly recently. The sheriff's department was among those. You noticed, Mr. Rutherford, have you noticed any effects from those?
No, sir, not really. In quite frankly, the county, the sheriff is obviously the chief tax officer for the county. So I know the money that's coming in and out of the county. And the county has a serious problem. The county commission, fortunately, we have a good county commission that has been very studious in taking care of the money. And we haven't had the problems that a lot of places, other places have. The coal severance money is way down from what it used to be. So we understood that the 3% cut had to be made. Fortunately for us, gas prices have gone down. So we went from almost $3 a gallon of gas that we were having to pay on a contract down to about $1.22, I believe it is now. So the 3% cut was negligible to us. It didn't affect anything, and so we're fine. We, like I say, work very well with the commission, and we understand the situation. So that's not been a problem for us so far, and we hope in the future that it won't be a problem, but you obviously can't predict the future. So.
Well, yeah, I was curious a little bit about looking at things from a national scale. Right now, police accountability and police transparency are kind of an issue that's going on around the country. And so I'm curious, well, I guess for you, it's what is currently in place and how do you see that going forward? And then what would you like to do to see more transparency and more?
Sure. When I first came into office, we had a thing, well, it's not a thing, but it was a pistol permit fund. And at that time, my predecessor, Mr. Tucker, had a private account on that. And nobody seemed to know what the audit said. And I think there were some FOIAs that were made that were never responded to. And the first thing I did was take that pistol permit money and put it into the county and make a special line item for it, where it's audited every year by state auditors. In addition to that, we made it public to where anybody can come in at any time, look at what's bought, what hasn't been bought, where the money is, where it went. So we made a special effort on that. And from that point on, we've made it, everything we can do to make it as transparent as possible. Now, with the understanding that because as far as the law enforcement part of it goes, there's certain things that you can't say during an investigation, obviously, and I think everybody here knows that we don't want the investigation to be compromised. But we try to, as soon as possible after the investigation, or at the point where it won't compromise the investigation, to immediately get that information out. And I think we've been very, very, very good on that, and we'll continue to do so. And we'll continue working on it, and abide by all the ethics and laws that are required. And in most cases, we go even beyond that because we do want to try to be as transparent as possible.
Transparency is important. I agree. I know when I first went in, I think Don Miller and I had a little disagreement, but we worked that out, and really it was good. Don, I really appreciate that, really. And she more or less explained to me the importance of having transparency, and so I worked that part out. Yes, there was a gun fund, and that was controlled by my secretary. I didn't know where to put that gun fund other than just keep it, and it's there if somebody wants to see what's in it or whatever. But let me say something about the gun fund. It seemed like I would be remiss in not saying that the gun fund supplied the bomb squad. It supplied the SWAT team. It supplied, I had developed a state-of-the-art range with remote control, which was the first in the state. These things that were coming out of the gun fund, they were down there. If somebody wanted to come down and see them, yeah, it's there. I told my secretary, it's open for them. But transparency, yes, I believe in it. You have to.
One of the things you said, sorry, I keep wanting to call both of you sheriff. I've known you both so long.
Mike's fine.
Chief, you mentioned the tax office earlier on, and I thought, that is a section of the sheriff's department. It's not quite as glamorous as the cars and lights, and so maybe I would ask you to elaborate on the improvements you said you've made in the tax office.
Sure.
Can you give some details?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I did was take my name off the tax tickets.
No.
And the second thing I did is I didn't require anybody to put my name on the checks when they paid their taxes. I thought that was foolish, and I thought that was nothing but politics at its worst as far as I was concerned. Next, we incorporated into the tax office where you can pay online. You can do it through credit cards and so forth. That's all makes it much easier for everybody to pay their taxes now. Taxes are not the best thing in the world that everybody wants to pay. I understand that. And we try to make it as easy as we can. So in addition to that, we've also put the taxes online where you can look up your taxes and make sure that, see what you have, or whether you're in, arrears or whatever the case may be. We also recently, about the last year, when taxes are due, you may have noticed in front of the courthouse, we blocked off with the city of Charleston assisting us. We blocked off one lane of the street. And we set that up for people to be able to come in and park without being charged a fee and without having to walk over, blocks to find parking areas. And they can park right in front of the courthouse, walk in, take care of their business, and then come back out. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for the taxpayers because they're the ones that pay our salaries. They're the ones that take care of the patrol cars and the deputies and the tax collectors and everybody else in county government. So we've worked hard in the tax office, and I think it's really paid dividends for that. We've also gone out and people, believe it or not, there are people that give bad checks to the sheriff. And so we go out and make a special effort to round those people up. And we've also gone to court through the prosecutor's office. We've gone to court and sued and collected, thousands and thousands of dollars from people that have not paid their taxes, and they're just not paying. And so I think we've made tremendous strides in the tax office, and it's worked out well, I believe, for the county.
Mr. Rhoda, how recent an innovation is paying the taxes on?
Gosh, that's probably been 10 years, eight or 9 years anyway, because we started that when I came in 2005 as sheriff. It was probably within that first year. I don't recall exactly the month, but I think it was the first year in 2005 that we changed that over.
Both of your previous terms ended because you were term limited. State law only allows sheriffs to serve for 8 consecutive years. Just very briefly, where do you stand on that? Do you think that's a good law? Do you think it ought to be changed? I know there have been some recent efforts to have it overturned. Either one of you?
I'm for unlimited terms, to be quite frank. I think the people of the county and the state, are smart enough to know who's a good sheriff and who's a bad sheriff. If they don't like somebody like the assessor, they don't think the assessor's doing a good job, they don't think the Secretary of State's doing a good job or whatever, they can vote them out. And that's what we have. That's our democracy. That's why we have elections, for people to decide who they want and what they want. And I think it should be left up to the citizens to decide that. I think there's some people that could argue the other way around, that it would be good for everybody to be in term limits. But I think there is something to be said for people that know what they're doing, that have experience. If you turn somebody out, every time they turn around, you're not going to have good experienced people knowing what they're doing to be able to do the job. So I think that in my humble opinion, I think it would be a good idea to be able to do that and let the people decide who should be, running and doing the job.
Okay.
I think there's only two officers that is that way, and that's the governor and the sheriff.
I think so.
I have pros and cons on that. I think if an individual's in there for some period of time, we're all human beings. We become complacent. That has a bad draw. If you have term limits, then I think you do have a right to vote people out. So, it's up to the people.
Anything else on that? Well, just looking ahead, it's a different year than it was back when I used to cover you guys. And, the gun permit law has changed, and I just wonder if what you see ahead with that law change, or if you've seen any effects of it yet.
The concealed weapons permit.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm thinking both from a law enforcement perspective and also from the little pot of money you guys spend on, things the department.
Right.
Either way.
Right. As far as the concealed weapons permit goes, I think it was a bad piece of legislation, quite frankly. At least with the concealed weapons permit, we can check people's mental hygiene records. We can check, see if they have any domestic violence histories, various things that we're required by law to do. If someone chooses to carry a concealed weapon now without a permit, we can't check that. if we'd have somebody standing in front of a school and loitering around, acting unusual. Deputy goes there to check on them. If they have a gun on them, we can, and no permit, we have a way to take care of the situation. If not, when we do the concealed weapons agreement, we can check on mental health history. But other than that, it's private and you cannot check on them. So if you go out, you can't check their mental health history. There's no way a police officer can do that. So we're going to have to turn around and drive away, because unless the person's homicidal or suicidal, we can't pick them up. We can't pick them up. And that person would go right across the street into that business or school and do whatever they want to with that gun, because we can't do anything about it. So I think there's a lot of situations where that, as a matter of fact, and you all reported on this, we had two individuals, a man and woman at Town Center, that both had guns on them. And both of them they had $26,000 in cash and over, I believe it was over $30,000 in drugs on them coming in and out of the Town Center, where with kids, parents, and everybody walking in and out. How did we get that? We charged them with concealed weapons violation. We brought them to our office, and during the discussion over there and getting search warrants as a result of the concealed weapons charges we were able to charge them, we were able to get the drugs and the guns and make some major drug buys off of them. So it was a classic example of why that law was needed in my estimation. I'm fully in favor of the Second Amendment. I understand it, but I think just like anything, that there are certain times when you have to have certain regulations and rules to follow for the safety of the public, and that's what that's my opinion on it. I think it's a bad piece of legislation. And on the second part of your situation, as far as what it may do for our finances, am I concerned about that? Yeah, a little bit, because we do use that. We use that. We don't use it for badges. We don't use it for knee patches. We don't use it for TPs. We don't use it for these other things. We use it for training for our deputies. We use it for, we have a driving simulator that we bought to teach the guys how to drive properly in pursuit and non-pursuit situations, whether it be country, bad weather, whatever. We did the simulator on that. We've greatly upgraded our firearms situation at the Camp Virgil Tate. We've used it for a lot of really good purposes for our officers. We bought vests for them. One of the things we did is we made a situation where we have a tourniquet, bandages, and different products to stop bleeding that we've put together for the deputies, and we put it inside their vest. So if they would be out somewhere and be injured, they can immediately have assistance with whatever injuries they have without having to wait for an ambulance, medicated to get there. So we've used it a great deal for very, very serious situations, training and equipment for the officers. So, but until the law comes into effect, we don't know what it's going to do. We don't know how much it's going to change it, whether it's going to go up, down, completely away. Don't think it'll go completely away, because there'll still be a lot of good people that'll want that.
But just to clarify, people can still get a permit.
Absolutely.
Still go through the entire process.
And that's a good point, because that's one thing I have a concern about, because a lot of people may think, well, I don't have to have a pistol permit now. So they go over and they run through Virginia, or they go through North Carolina or South Carolina, some of the states that have reciprocal agreements with us, thinking that, well, because we don't have it, they don't have to, to have a permit. Well, they go down there and they end up getting stopped and end up getting some serious problems, because they're thinking they don't have to have a permit, but they do in these other states. So that's a concern of mine, that they might have a problem with, getting in trouble in another state, thinking their state's similar to our state. So yes, it's the same procedure, same fees, everything's the same. It's just the only thing that's basically changed is that you don't have to have one now to carry a concealed weapon in the state.
Sir, any thoughts on the future with the new law and no longer requiring a gun permit?
Yes, as he mentioned the gun permit, he threw a little jab in there about the TP. Let me explain to you about the TP.
Okay.
Amherst Coal Company up here, they put on a history down in St. Albans, down there at the park, and it was educating our youth on how the river assists in helping our growth in the area of Kanawha County River. So I volunteered with, I don't know whether you remember Nelson Jones. He's a good man. He said, Dave, I need your help because we're going to put on this history thing. They had different areas down there where the children could go and get accustomed to what they were. Yes, I bought that TV. Paid $500 for it. We educated almost 3,000 students come through there. If it means, if it would mean doing that again, yes, I would do it again. You can't beat education. That was something that was well thought of, not by me, but by Nelson Jones. Back to what you were saying, Don, I think that I'm a professional law enforcement officer, and I've got to think like my troops out in the field. The law is going to put us at a disadvantage, somewhat, because when you see people, it's coming to effect. When you see people carrying firearms, you don't know in your mind whether this individual knows how to load it, let alone pull it and use it. That puts you at a little disadvantage. Now, the training as far as getting the law enforcement accustomed to this, that's going to come from the State Police Academy. I would be glad to retrain or add to the training. But we're trained down there when we stop someone or when we see someone, they're automatically armed. You may not be able to see it, but that's something that it's bred in us. We assume that person's armed, especially when you approach an automobile. This is not going to change that. That's their own safety. The fact that people will be carrying firearms. Now, I've heard of this Second Amendment. Well, as soon as our fathers up here at the State House passed this law, I had 5 calls, not 3, not 5. And these are people that believe in the Second Amendment. They said, Dave, I think they've done wrong. Well, tell me, what do you mean? I knew what they were going to say. They said, because you used to teach out on the range, and we did. We taught classes out on the range. People could go out there free of charge and learn, go through a course to get the permit. Some of these people were out on the range. I got to tell you this one little story. I don't want to bug you down, but a lady was out there and she had a firearm. It was a revolver, the cylinder type. And after the class, we went up to the range and we said, now we want to make sure everybody's unloaded. She starts looking down the barrel to see if it was loaded. After we just went through the classroom part of it. So if you see what we're getting into, the mindset, the only thing they think about is putting a gun on the side or carrying a weapon. And you're going to have probably the citizens out there that's going to be just as uneasy for the good people who do have a permit. And the permit does nothing more than what he said. We try to weed out the people that have no business carrying a firearm. It's bad enough. The people that are the bad people are going to carry them whether you know it or not. They're going to get them one way or another. They're going to carry them. So with the wisdom that we have from the State House, they come up with this law. Well, it is a law, and the sheriff, as your sheriff, I will abide by it. May not like it. It's completely, I don't know where they come from when they devise it. But when I got people that were for the Second Amendment coming and calling me and saying, Dave, it's wrong. Well, I said, don't tell me, you've got to tell the people who actually made it. Okay.
Y'all have anything else?
I just have a really light question. How old are each of you? What's your age? You didn't put that in the bio.
I'm 64.
I'm a big 80.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But let me say something. Age is nothing but a number.
Yeah. No, it's just like if we're doing like a little bio thing.
But when you come up to Lately Field, I'll show you how to run the 100-yard dash. Not once, but twice.
All righty, are we good? Yep. All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, brother.
Pleasure to